welcome to Poetic Espresso, where I talk about all things books and writing. So today we're going to talk about graphic novels and mental health. Graphic novels and mental health aren't really a topic that I see on YouTube, and I think it's a booming topic with graphic medicine becoming more popular. You can visit their website down below to learn more about it. It's more of a broad across the range of wellness. But anyways, so I wanted to make a video talking about some graphic novels you can read to learn more about mental health. And this video is mainly going to focus on graphic novels about mental illness because that's mostly what I have seen. I haven't seen a lot of like self-help graphic novels. I'm sure there's a lot of zines you can find about it though. So why should you read graphic novels about mental health? Well, I think you can learn better than you can reading just the DSM about mental health. And the reason for this is the art. It brings it to an entirely different level of learning, and I think that you experience something different when you see art as opposed to just reading symptoms from text. So if you're really trying to learn more about this, especially if you're like a psychology major, I really recommend that you check these graphic novels out. So if you want to learn about mental illness just generally across the board, briefly about different mental illnesses, then I recommend you check out Psychiatric Tales. So this is a short read written by someone who used to work in a psychiatric ward, and they go through different chapters which are separated by mental illness. So there's like antisocial personality disorder, schizophrenia, etc. And you can see what they learned about this illness from their experience working in the ward. So I think that's an interesting perspective. Now, more specifically into specific mental illnesses is what I'm going to get into. So the first mental illness I'm going to talk about is bipolar disorder, and I have some great recommendations for learning about this. So I have bipolar 2 disorder. I know a lot about it, and I've read some graphic novels about it, 2 of which I'm going to show to you. And so if you are trying to learn more about bipolar disorder, whether you've been diagnosed with it, a friend has been diagnosed with it, or you're just fascinated about it, I highly recommend that you check out Ellen Forney. And Ellen Forney is a Seattle graphic novelist and comic artist who did some work in the Capitol Hill Light Rail. If you've been in Seattle before or gone to Capitol Hill, you might have seen this. It's a black, white, and red illustration with a peace sign going like downward like that. So she made that, but she also made these 2 great books about bipolar disorder. So Marvels, I fell in love with this book even before I had bipolar disorder, a couple years before I was diagnosed with it, and I found it really fascinating, and it was one of the best graphic novels that I have read, and at the time it was like one of my favorites. I still think it's one of my favorites. So I am fortunate enough to have gotten this signed, and I met her. I don't have a picture with her because my phone was being a butt at the time, sadly. Yeah. So this book, let's see, it was written in 2012. That's pretty recent. I thought it was an older book. And it's entirely in black and white. You can see some here, and it goes through her journey of being diagnosed with this disorder, and it's a lot of education about this disorder too, though it's more about her experience from having like early symptoms. It starts out when she was tiny bit before she was diagnosed, and then her journey getting like the right medication and everything like that. And it has an interesting discussion that I think is unique to other bipolar books about creativity related to mental illness. And since she is a creative, this is a topic that she thought about in her mind. How does medication, is it going to affect my creativity? Which is the reason that she didn't want to go on medication. She did end up going on medication. And she talks about this a lot throughout the book, and she made up this thing called Club Van Gogh. I don't know if this came with the book or not, but I got it anyways. Maybe it was when I saw her. I have no clue how I found it, but I'm a member of Club Van Gogh, which is basically, I think from what I remember, if you have a mental illness and you're an artist, it's like you're a part of Club Van Gogh. So here's my card. I think I'm gonna use it as a bookmark. I can't recommend this book enough more if you have bipolar disorder or want to learn more about it. It's great. And Ellen is a very interesting person. So then she wrote this book in 2018, I want to say. It did come out really recently. That's how I met her, because she just came out with it. And I met her through, she did a talk at Seattle Medical Center about graphic medicine. So anyways, I almost didn't go to that talk, but then I just decided to, and I'm glad I did. So if you can't tell, I'm a big fan. But so Rock Steady, anyways, is a self-help guide if you have bipolar disorder. I think this can be applicable to depression or mental health care in general. I knew a lot about like self-care and had developed my own practice from going to therapy for many years, and so I kind of knew everything in this book, but I thought it was a nice review. And I think if you are overwhelmed by just being diagnosed with bipolar depression, this is a really good resource for you in combination with therapy and medication. This is what it kind of looks like inside. It's a nice guide. Now, the third book about bipolar disorder is RX, and this is written by a woman who worked in an advertisement agency for medicine that was for mental illnesses, so that's a unique and interesting perspective to hear from that side of like the schemes that advertising agencies do. But it's mostly about her experience going through kind of defiance of having bipolar disorder and not wanting to, not embracing it. It's not really a thing that's like, oh my gosh, I love this disorder. No, I'm not saying it in that way. I'm saying resisting, like, I hate this kind of thing. So that's what she did throughout a lot of the book, and I think that from what I remember, she had been dealing with this mental illness for a while, so it's not really a start from when she had it to going on the right path with medication like bipolar, like Marbles is. It might be, I don't think it is. But anyways, then she ends up in the psychiatric hospital, so she has very severe bipolar disorder, and she actually started this book when she was in the psychiatric hospital. And so I think this book, the main theme that it deals with is resistance to your mental illness. And you can also just learn generally more about bipolar disorder, especially the topics of like hallucination and delusions, which aren't really talked about a lot with bipolar disorder, I find. And what I mean by that is like the delusion, oh, I'm like gonna be a rock star, and like you actually believe it and go out and do that, which is a part of mania. And so I think you could learn a lot about that too. Now let's talk about depression. So I have two recommendations for this. The first is Hyperbole and a Half. So this book was pretty popular about like 5 years ago. It had a hot minute and it still holds up. I see it a lot of places still. And so this book is all color illustrations. It started out as a blog, and it's graphic essays about depression, and it has a lot of humor to it. So the impossible of making something like depression be funny, this author does and is able to do that. A lot of people find it funny. I don't know if you will find it funny, but many people do, so chances are you might too. And there's like dogs in it too a lot, so if you like dogs, that might be great. And the style is like if someone had paint, I think, like Microsoft Paint, and I think that the artist actually made some of this on Microsoft Paint. I don't mean that as an insult, it's just style like that. And the next book is my lesbian experience with loneliness. Like the title says, it's someone's experience navigating through sexuality and mental illness. So I think this book can help people learn about the intersections of sexuality and mental health, and just intersectionality when it comes to mental health. I personally haven't read this book. It does look good though. I've heard good things about it. If you want to learn more about eating disorders, there's this massive book called Lighter Than My Shadow. It really is massive. It's like this big, this thick, but it doesn't take that long to read because there might be like 3 sentences on one page, and then it has these gorgeous illustrations that take up like 2 pages, and it really is really artful. And I think it's one of the most artful graphic novels that I've read before, in terms of just the pure art of it, and not so much in a comic style. And so this book talks about the author's experience with an eating disorder when she's growing up, the early symptoms of it, her treatment, and how she deals with some mistreatment, and then moving forward with it. And then another graphic novel that I just saw while browsing new graphic novels about mental health. I haven't seen a ton recently since I wrote my blog post about some popular ones, at least ones that are more popular. I'm sure there's been a lot out there. I'm not super into comics or anything. I don't go to Comic-Con or like comic fests, so this is just like general knowledge and fascination and passion for the topic. So from I saw while like going through everything about graphic novels is there's one called Lucille, which I think is originally published in Spanish and then it was translated to different languages, but it's about someone's experience with an eating disorder and alcoholism, and like the intersections of that too. You'll see in a lot of these graphic novels, some of them, is that they deal with multiple illnesses at once. And then pivoting to kind of a different mental illness you might not think about when thinking about mental illness, that is Alzheimer's. So the book Tangles is about someone's experience with their parent being diagnosed with Alzheimer's and how the family deals with that, etc. Then if you want to read more about schizophrenia, the book Swallow Me Whole. I don't know if this is fictional or real. I kind of think it's fictional, but it's about these twins, and one of them, I don't think both of them have schizophrenia, and it also deals with OCD, etc. I haven't read this one either. It's one of the only ones I could find about schizophrenia. And then when talking about autism and Asperger's, I'm looking down because I wrote notes. There's the book Something is Different About Dad, and that is about Asperger's, which is not really a topic I see a lot in comics, and I think that could be an interesting read too. If you just want to learn about not mental illnesses, just mental health in general, if you're into neuroscience, then Neurocomic would be a great book for you. And this book, it goes through neuroscience, It's like kind of like the title says, and it has great art to go alongside it. And then lastly, there's a book that I will be reading for Mental Healthathon. I haven't gotten to it yet. It's called Couch Fiction, and I think it's a really unique book. I haven't seen any book like it, like many of these books, but this one really piques my interest because it's about a therapist and how they run their therapy practice. So you see the inside perspective of therapy. I'm excited to read this. This book is hard to find. I think Whiter Than My Shadow is also hard to find because it's so big and artful, and I imagine hard to produce. I'm not sure though about Lighter Than My Shadow, but I know about this one that it's hard to find. You can buy it on Amazon for like 50 bucks, so that showed me it's hard to find. You can't find it in like Barnes & Noble, but you can get it on Kindle for $15, so that's what I'm doing, and I'll see how reading a graphic novel on the Kindle is. So yeah, that's everything. I hope that you found your next book to read. Make sure to subscribe down below. You can find me at EJO Writes on social media, and I put out videos as much as I can about poetry and literature and writing. So I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, do self-care,